Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Open Heart Closed Case Night on the Exceptional Conservative Show. We're part of TECNTV.com. Of course, in remembrance of my beloved daughter, Shanice Milton, we always focus on Friday nights. This is one of the toughest interview nights for us because we focus on unresolved homicides, missing persons, teen suicides, child abuse cases, public health, public safety, and we've had some great inspirational stories told during this time period. One of which I like to add to that particular fold is the work done by this great American, a true American patriot who loves our children. I mean, with a love that seems incomparable. Author Schaper is with us tonight. He's the organization director for massresistance.org. You can find him at Mass Resistance on Twitter and Facebook if they allow him back on anytime soon. I don't know how that works. But I want to introduce to some and present to others a gentleman who has fought the great fight against the sexual predator revolution and its global governmental impact, especially here at home. Author Schaper is with us tonight. Good evening, sir. It's a tremendous honor to have you on our show tonight.
Thank you so much for having me, Kenneth. I appreciate it. My last name is Schaper. Some people get it wrong. Don't worry about it. I just want to get that out there. Yeah, I'm now the organization director for Mass Resistance. I've been working with this institution now for the last, 2.5 years. I've been the organization director, but I served as a volunteer, for many years before that. I got in touch with them starting in 2014 when they were fighting back against the Massachusetts Department of Children and Families. They had taken a daughter, Justina Pelletier, from her parents against their will, claiming that the parents were abusing this child, but really she was enduring more abuse in the Massachusetts department. They held the kid against the parents' will for a year. I was reporting on this. Then it was speaking with Brian Kamaker, the president of Mass Resistance. I started to learn about how the local schools were pushing LGBT ideologies, LGBT perversion on the children, and they were treating this as normative. This was shocking, disgusting stuff. I began to report on that. Then I did stuff as the volunteer director in California. We had some notable victories stopping some really bad legislation, and now I'm helping to build chapters and equip people to fight this agenda around the country and around the world too.
Now, Mass Resistance, first and foremost, give everybody the opportunity. Where can people find your information?
Sure. Our website is www.massresistance.org. People can call me directly. My phone number is 781-474-3005. I'll say it again, 781-474-3005. And my email address is Arthur, A-R-T-H-U-R, at massresistance.org. I've just spoken to some parents in the Fairfax, Virginia area, including a parent whose child is enrolled at one of the there's this very perverse charter or private school, the Lab School, which is in the northwest section of Washington, D.C., and they are promoting some of the most horrific ideologies. They have Black Lives Matter banners, and I don't have to tell you, Black Lives Matter doesn't care about Black lives at all. It's an anti-American, anti-family, pro-homosexual hate group, which is being pushed by a lot of corporate interests. And so I'm working with parents right now. We're going to put that school under a spotlight and put an end to this perverse promotion. So that's how people can contact me. I've worked with activists all over the country. Tracy Shannon, our Texas director, was very skillful and influential in stopping the Drag Queen Story Hour programs there in Houston. We shut down programs in other parts of the country. And of course, this COVID-19 lockdown atmosphere has put a lot of this LGBT promotionalism on hold. So that's worked in our favor too.
Exactly. Now, you mentioned the LGBTQRSTUVWXYZ add the P agenda. And some people would say, wait a minute, you're being discriminatory. That is a normal life it is a normal existence. It is part of the genetic fiber of human beings. People can choose whatever uh, sexuality they want to be. What say you, sir, regarding what I would consider nonsense? But what say you, sir?
Well, I mean, first of all, I mean, I have engaged on this issue even with conservatives, and I'm just by and large very concerned. There's a lot of conservatives who are either very non-committal or accommodationist on this issue, or they're just very ignorant. And I mean, just to speak to some of the points you've made, no, people aren't born gay. There's no genetic evidence for this. There was an incredible study just released last year that was headed by two researchers, one from Stanford and one from MIT, and they indicate very clearly there is no gay gene. And some people look inside the details of the summary and they'll say, well, there's genetic elements, but all of this has to do with environmental factors which may initiate or instigate homosexual tendencies. These are not innate genetic properties. In fact, just the sheer logic of biology disputes this nonsense. If people were born gay, people wouldn't be born at all because homosexuals don't reproduce. They recruit. And the madness behind transgenderism is even easier to debunk. There is growing evidence within cellular biology is so incredibly intricate. It's a fascinating machinery beyond anybody's belief. Darwin never understood it. It completely debunks the whole Darwinian evolutionary theology. Really, it's a religion. It's not a
Yes.
scientific body of work. I'm not here to push necessarily a religious or a spiritual agenda specifically on this issue either, only because the science, the clear sociological, historical evidence is manifest. Homosexual conduct is not a civil right. It's not an identity. These are destructive behaviors. It's a misuse of organs. Anyone with any passing knowledge of physiology should be able to explain this or understand this. Mass Resistance tried to assist a urologist named Dr. Paul Church. He was summarily bullied, pressured, demoted, and fired from a hospital simply for telling the truth about homosexual conduct and the damage it did to his patients. He was a urologist, so he was very familiar with the medical consequences.
Yes.
And yet we have seen this agenda proceeding relentlessly because we have seen conservatives and large, especially politicians and influencers, who refuse to contend, confront, and win on this issue. They don't want to talk about the sordid realities, the core lie of the LGBT movement. They don't want to talk about how there is an intricate aspect of abuse that is just rampant in homosexual populations. Many homosexuals were in turn abused as kids themselves, sexually, if not emotionally, if not physically. These are serious issues. Homosexuality was recognized as a mental disorder until political bullying forced psychological associations to back away. That is clearly not good science. And this has still become all too much of a problem. But now we are seeing in the broader basic culture, we're seeing drag queens demanding the right to read stories to groom children. Kids are being forced to learn about homosexual acts and transgender identities in the classroom. Churches, charities, and small businesses are facing all kinds of bullying, and we even have the Supreme Court issuing these unconstitutional, unknown rulings indicating this false notion that men can become women, women can become men, declaring war on the very nature of gender itself. People are starting to realize what we were warning people about 10 or 20 years ago has come to pass. We were right. People are starting to listen. Mass resistance provides the resources to educate people and to effectively organize people to fight against the promotion of this agenda. We're now expanding our broader vision to start really educating conservative audiences to be more committed, militant, and effective at fighting this agenda. Policymakers, influencers, media outlets, they need to be bold on speaking out against this. It's not enough to talk about defending religious liberty. A libertarian attitude of live and let live is clearly not working anymore because
Yes.
you cannot have liberty without morality.
I got to ask you here, Mr. Schaper, um, and
Sure.
there are people who watch it tonight, and they watched us with Dr. Reisman. Judith Reisman was on last week. John Ulner. They were speaking about this, and they might say, "Ken, you're just being mean spirited. There is nothing wrong with these people. They just have a way of living a certain lifestyle." Uh, is that true, or is there political science being used basically to normalize a behavior into our existence, which in and of itself will destroy our society?
Yeah, the behaviors are inherently destructive. It's a misuse of organs, like shoving a straw up your nose
Oof.
to drink. I mean, that's a very vivid, if not explicit image. And people might say, well, that has to do with male homosexuality. Well, female homosexuality is also destructive and aberrant to the body. There are therapists who have confirmed that the interactions of two males and two females, it actually not only causes physical harm, but it causes mental harm, mental anguish. There's a diminution in self-esteem because human beings were not supposed to be debasing themselves when engaging with each other in such an intimate fashion. There's a clear extensive design. These private problems have public consequence. Private behavior has public consequences. I mean, we criminalize incest, we criminalize prostitution, and to the credit, even for Washington D.C., there was an attempt to decriminalize prostitution, but I understand that that went down to defeat.
Yes,
It's
it did.
good. But I mean, the fact that it was even considered for the municipality is really shocking. But this is an inevitable intricacy. You see sexual deviance and sexual immorality, and it leads to the human trafficking, sex trafficking. These problems are inseparable. This is a real problem. And live and let live doesn't cut it when we're talking about children, when we're talking
Yes.
about public health, when we're talking about the moral ecology for a country. I cannot tell you how much crap that I've gotten from a number of activists. Over the past couple of days, there has been a great uproar about the voter fraud, which is so prevalent in a number of the contested states. And people go, we've got bigger issues to talk about. We've got all this voter fraud. But it's been a
Really?
social movement. It's a socialist movement that is propping up Joe Biden and certainly Kamala Harris, who is openly endorsing communistic ideas. And one part of this communistic takeover has been the destruction of family and the normalization of homosexuality, transgenderism, and other sexual degeneracies. This was all laid out for the public to see in the congressional record of 1963. We and to me, there's a bigger push that I'm making. Conservatism needs to have a robust opposition. We shouldn't be tolerating it. And I'm even critical of the president. There's been these so-called Trump pride movements treating the homosexuality and the people who engage in it as though it's like another iteration of identity politics or even the civil rights. This is wrong. This is wrong-headed. It's a complete error. I mean, earlier this year, you had a so-called conservative drag queen chastising parents for taking their kids to drag queen story hour. And I'm thinking, what's really going on here? Is there a desire to hold parents accountable and put an end to these programs? Or is it really a gay conservative dressing up as a woman trying to make a name for himself in the so-called conservative movement? It's just more grift. It's more self-promotion, and it's a very mixed message to say the least. I mean, there can't be compromise on this. Homosexuality is aberrant. It undermines the family. It undermines the person. It hurts the established cultural order, the political order. I mean, we've seen the Equality Act, which is anything but. That
Yeah.
was passed out of the House last year. This would have treated these perverse behaviors as another extension of the civil rights movement. This would have put churches and charities and small businesses into a terrible bind. It would have banned reparative therapy, an undermining of our First Amendment. There are horrific implications, which we are only now seeing in the United States which would have already become prevalent in, like in Canada, for example. We have parents who are going to jail because they don't want their kids being transitioned into the opposite sex. We
Yes.
have people who are facing multi-thousand-dollar fines for calling a man a man.
Yeah.
This kind of horrific Stalinist tyranny is becoming commonplace in Western countries because of this LGBT agenda. And we have to push back and we have to say, no, there's no accommodating this.
Now, mass resistance has been working for a number of decades in terms of this particular pushback. You were very successful in California and in Texas in terms of fighting back against the drag queens. But I want to go in a different area here because future President Biden, if you allow the fraud to continue, um, has already stated that it's okay for boys to have surgery to become girls and girls likewise to become boys. It goes to this particular question here: when does homosexuality begin, and its acceptance tolerates going down to pedophilia? If you know what I'm saying here.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. As far as origins are concerned, if I understand your question,
Yeah.
we're seeing the origins have to do with sexual abuse in many cases.
Yes.
Ryan Sorba has done extensive research on the etiology of homosexual feelings and behaviors, and by and large, sexual abuse is a big factor in it. Emotional abuse, the lack of role modeling and parenting by the same sex parent, overbearing or interventionist abuse from the opposite sex parent is also an issue. And of course, the homosexual movement early on wanted to normalize their behaviors as akin and equal to natural relations between men and women. And yes, indeed, there has been a long-standing push with the North American Man Boy Love Association to make pedophilia acceptable, to normalize sexual relations with children. We're seeing pushes toward this in California. Mass resistance. We did the best we could to stop this horrific bill, Senate Bill 145. It ultimately passed the slimmest of margins in the legislature and signed by the governor. This bill allows for homosexual predators to prey on minors, and they can avoid the sex offender registry. Judges now have the discretion. They don't have to list them as sex offenders. So you could have a 24-year-old having sex with a 14-year-old,
Mm.
and a judge could now decide that that 24-year-old doesn't have to register as a sex offender. That is a clear step towards pedophilia. This is not, and such an irony. The proponents of this bill were making the claim that this is all about equality for LGBT individuals. But it really just goes to show there's a lot of pedophilia that is endemic in the whole homosexual movement.
You know, I have to take moments here because this is really revolting, um, physically as well as mentally, in the sense that grown men are going after little boys, grown women doing the very same thing for little girls. And listening to John Ulner, single mothers dating, allowing predators to come near their children in such a fashion, and yet we have this, whether it's a conservative like Ron Johnson, U.S. Senator from Wisconsin, or others on the left who say that, listen, nobody's getting hurt. If someone gets hurt, then we'll get involved. Is it too late once someone's been hurt to get involved?
Absolutely. I mean, the normalization of these behaviors has made the proliferation of abuse far more far more probable. I mean, that's the bottom line. This argument, it's so narrow-minded and very it's a very idiosyncratic understanding of harm.
Yes.
The harm is not just immediate, it's also long term and even intangible. There's the breakdown of the public order. There are the political and the legal implications. We see bakers that are being dragged into court or being sued or shut down by corrupted human rights commissions in different states. The Labor Commission in Portland, in Oregon, shut down Sweet Cakes by Melissa Klein because they didn't want to bake a cake for a gay wedding.
Yes.
This is the harms are already rolling out, and it's all based on lies. And what's a frustration that I'm becoming more determined to confront is
Yes.
that conservatives don't want to speak the truth about this. They are so terrified of being labeled homophobic. They're so terrified of being labeled bigoted or narrow minded. They're so concerned about what people will say about them online or in print. It's just outrageous. And suffice to say, sometimes there are parents who reach out to our organization. They want to stop the sex ed curriculum being pushed on their kids, but we then explain to them you have to have the courage of your convictions to say that homosexuality is wrong, that transgenderism is wrong. And
Mm-hmm.
some of these parents balk and they go, well, I don't agree with that. I think it is okay. Just don't teach it to my kids. But here's the problem.
Yeah.
If it's not okay, well, I mean, if there's nothing wrong with being gay, then why is it wrong to teach it to your kids? You have to
Exactly.
speak.
Bingo. You hit it out of the park there. That's grand slam right there. And it goes back to, and I love Christians and Christian tolerance. As a Christian myself, I feel the same way you feel about conservatives. This whole idea that do unto others as you would have them do unto you, love your neighbor as you love yourself. Well, it's
Sure.
okay for my neighbor to be like that, but me and my kids, no, can't have that. And there's not a
Mhm.
true justification for it besides the fact that you are cowardice in approaching this. We've seen the cowardice come with churches for not fighting against being shut down during COVID.
Yes.
You have
Yes.
taken it on the chin by SPLC, Southern Poverty Leadership, or
Oh yeah, there's that hate
yeah,
group in Alabama targets me.
yes,
When they're not defaming Jews, attacking Muslims,
exactly.
they tried to shut down charter schools that serve black students, specifically in the state of Mississippi. I mean, they're a hate group. And I've been successful at exposing their true nature, history, and outcomes to a number of media organs. NPR in Michigan doesn't use them anymore. The Southern California News Group no longer cites them. My understanding is that the FBI no longer refers to them. And I mentioned a Muslim who was defamed. That was Maji Nawaz. He won a $3.8 million settlement. It's been quite ironic. The more that their hate spews out against me, against my employer, not just Mass Resistance, but our organization was founded by an Orthodox Jew who endured discrimination himself as a youth in blue state, so-called progressive Minnesota. He actually was treated with greater dignity and the natural right respect when he was in the South than he had endured when he was in Minnesota. So the irony is quite extravagant. The way they treat Orthodox Jews is really disgusting. Oh, and get this. I mean, if you probably know about this, but just to share with your audience, the founder of that hate group, Morris Dees, was fired for engaging in repeated acts of sexism and racism against his own employees and for sexual misconduct. And this is something new that we hope to be sharing recently. The new CEO and director, a lady named Margaret Wong, took pictures with anti Semites like Nick Cannon, the same
Wow.
Nick, and he's anti white, and Nick Cannon, who says that white people and Jews are savages. That is anti Semitism. And the director of the SPLC is taking pictures with this hate monger and has not disavowed it or taken it down from public consumption. They're a hate group, they're a fraud, and we've done a very good job of beating them down. In fact, they've even lamented in some of their blogs. We've attacked mass resistance, we've exposed them, and yet they're growing. Yes, we are.
Exactly.
No
You
weapon formed against us shall prosper.
Amen. Now, I want to also mention your work against Black Lives Matter. We talked about it briefly, but Black Lives Matter is a Marxist political organization with the intent of introducing and installing communism in the United States of America. It has nothing to do whatsoever with helping black people, helping people's
Yeah.
lives, or even making a matter of any difference. Their objective is to use force in the political realm and outside of it to force black men out of the household. Where did I go wrong with anything I said?
Nowhere at all. I would just extend by adding to your remarks. It was founded by three lesbians. They brag about being trained Marxists. There's growing evidence that the Chinese Communist Party is providing excessive funding to Black Lives Matter, and it's mostly a bunch of racist white people.
Yes.
I've seen they've attacked the city council in my hometown, the city of Torrance. They've done considerable perverse, acts. We've seen this in Minneapolis and New York, in the state of New York, city of New York. It's been really refreshing to see many more Black lives speak out forcefully against this hate group. I met one journalist in my home city, and he said very plainly, I don't need anybody to tell me that my life matters. I already know that. Um, it's very important, though, that people with any kind of conscience have to demonstrate conviction, because that's what's really lacking at this point. These guys, just referencing Tucker Carlson, they're not monsters, they're vipers, or they're vampires, and all they need is a little light shined on them and they run away. But there just seems to be a considerable lack of courage generally. I mean, the president is demonstrating consummate, unprecedented courage in the face of these onslaughts against him and against this country. There's a growing number of Republicans in Congress that are demonstrating some courage with him, but we, the people, have to start assuming this courage, that we have to be able to, and white people especially, have to have the courage to speak up for Black Lives Matter too, not allowing race of any kind to feature or factor into whether we speak the truth about something. It doesn't matter that I'm white or that someone else is black or Asian. We have to be able to say Black Lives Matter is a hate group. They destroy the family. They want to target children. They want to undermine this country. They want to turn it into a communist dystopia. And we have to have the courage of our convictions to call it out, especially the LGBT stuff. Founded by three lesbians, they declared on their website that they wanted to disrupt the nuclear family, undermine so-called Western patriarchy. They claim to want to affirm queer identities when it's the whole queer movement that's been hurting Black families for the last 50 years. They've been targeting Black families horribly.
Exactly. And nothing better to target Black families with than Black females, lesbians, to have the image of a mother but have the attack dog spirit of a militia. I want to bring up the fact also that there are those who have run away from mass resistance, and they say we privately they'll tell you, Arthur, and they'll tell me, listen, I agree with you. Listen, I know what you're saying. I feel what you're saying. But I can't go out there and say that because I won't be elected to office. Do you have proof of anybody who's been elected to office that's supported
Oh,
mass
wow.
resistance?
That's a great question. Our latest report, Ms. Marjorie Green of Northwestern Georgia,
Woo!
she was an outspoken activist with mass resistance. The Southern Poverty Law Center, or Hate Center, attacked her a number of times. Mainstream media sources drew from those false reports, those scandalous smear ticks, to try to discredit her. And sadly, you've got the Republican conference in Congress is already like lecturing her and telling her she needs to behave like a congresswoman. She's doing exactly what a representative should be doing: vocal and outspoken, expecting leadership and confrontation against this corrupt, socialist, LGBT agenda. We need more. She is the right wing version of the squad. We need more people like her who are uncompromising and outspoken on all conservative issues. And I might as well throw this in too. I ran for office in the state assembly here in California. I did not budge an inch from my opposition to LGBT behaviors and ideologies. I was outspoken on it. I defended my views, and I still received the endorsement of Mr. Ward Connerly, who was
Wow.
determined to prevent the repeal of Prop 209. He had enacted that proposition in 1996 to ban affirmative action, really bureaucratic racism. State legislature here has become so perverted and so far to the left, not just allowing predators to prey on minors, but they wanted to reinstate discrimination. This is the Democratic Party. This is what they're good at. And Ward Connerly's efforts have been successful. The attempt to repeal Prop 209 failed. I received his endorsement. I was outspoken about my views, and I said I don't support treating homosexuality, transgenderism, and the like as civil rights. And I even was not afraid to say to the surrogate I spoke with, Janice Camarena, what's her name? She was the key subject who initiated the fight against affirmative action. I said to her, if Connerly does not want to endorse me, that's a risk I'll take, but I'm not going to back down on this. I got the endorsement. I got the same margin of votes, practically the same as the previous candidate who had run in the same district. That guy spent $1 million.
Wow.
I hardly spent any money. It just goes to show that there is a power in standing your ground for good ideas and being a real contrast. If I had had more money, if I had had more opportunity to promote my campaign, I know I would have done much better. So conservative or establishment political leaders need to learn this lesson from we the people. We expect a forceful, aggressive, outspoken opposition to these unconstitutional and anti-family policies. And Marjorie Greene is a perfect example that you can succeed standing up for what's right.
No, author Schaper with us tonight, ladies and gentlemen.
Schaper, please.
Schaper. I see the A. I see the A, and I keep messing it up. Author Schaper with us tonight. I do apologize for saying your name wrong. I apologize for that. But in closing here, there are individuals who are inspired right now. They see what's happened to Donald Trump. In terms of the election, and they are thinking about 2022, and they're saying, you know what, I need to know what to say, I need to have courage, but I don't want to fail at this. How can they contact you? How can they talk with you about gaining the tips necessary to be a strong candidate and defend what is truly right for this republic?
They can call me directly. My phone number is 781-474-3005. That's my work cell. I'm absolutely willing to give that out to the public. I'll say it again, 781-474-3005. My email address is Arthur, ARTHUR, at massresistance.org. And everyone is welcome to visit our website, www.massresistance.org, and our Twitter feed, you have it displayed at Mass Resistance. And I definitely encourage people to reach out to us. They do not have to fight this alone. We are ready and able to equip them to fight and win against this very destructive LGBT agenda.
We're pretty much at a point now where it's either now or never. We don't have a second chance at this. This is it.
Yes.
Author Schaper, thank you so much for being with us tonight. It was fun. God bless you.
Thank you, Kenneth. I appreciate it.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we will be back with more of the best in urban conservative talk, with a closeout of where we are in terms of overall our republic, our nation, and basically this particular world. We'll be right back with more of the best right after this.